Did you know that simply changing when you eat can have a profound impact on how you age? Studies are showing that intermittent fasting isn't just about weight loss. It's a powerful way to influence your cellular biology and potentially extend not just your lifespan, but also your health span, the years you spend in good health. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Self Longevity Method channel. Today, we're going to deep dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of longevity science, how intermittent fasting can slow down the aging process. We all want to live longer, but more importantly, we want those years to be vibrant and healthy. That's why today's topic is so special. Intermittent fasting isn't just another dietary trend. It's a powerful metabolic intervention with remarkable effects at the cellular level, and it's one that scientists are getting incredibly excited about. Now, I find this research fascinating because it represents one of the most accessible ways we can influence our biological age. Not to mention, there's a personal gain. I just turned 50, and more so than ever before, I'm interested not just for myself, for my parents, also for my children. So in this video, we're going to explore 5 key mechanisms through which intermittent fasting can slow down aging. 1. Enhanced cellular stress response. 2. Improving mitochondrial function. 3. Reducing inflammatory markers. 4. Promoting autophagy. And number 5, metabolic switching and ketone production. If any of those topics seem complicated, don't worry. Each topic we're going to explain in detail so you can understand the topic and the science behind each of these mechanisms. All right, let's dive into mechanism 1, enhanced cellular response. The first way intermittent fasting slows down aging is by enhancing your body's cellular stress response. So, what exactly does that mean? Fasting essentially creates a mild stress on your cells. In scientific terms, this is called hormesis. Think of it as a workout for your cells. Just as lifting weights stresses your muscles, making them stronger, fasting stresses your cells in a more beneficial way. When we fast, our cells activate a coordinated, adaptive stress response. And this stress response includes a number of things. Increased antioxidant defenses. Your cells produce more enzymes that neutralize harmful free radicals. Number 2, enhanced DNA repair. Your cells become better at fixing damaged DNA. Number 3, improved protein quality control. Your cells get better at maintaining proper protein structure and function. And lastly, increased mitochondrial biogenesis. In other words, your cells can create more energy-producing mitochondria. And when you take all of these things together, what you're really doing is reducing inflammation. Your cells are basically reducing the inflammatory signaling process. So what happens? All of these things taken together, they're helping to maintain the cell's integrity, the cell's function, and when you put it all together, they're helping to reduce aging at the level of the cell. Now, there's lots of data that we're going to get into, and as always, you'll have the references for all of these. There's a study published in the New England Journal, this is back in 2019, and what they showed was that the adaptive stress response is actually conserved across all sorts of species, from simple organisms to humans. And what this means is there's an ancient and fundamental biological mechanism here that's important. Now, interestingly, the cell response that occurs due to stress isn't just activated during fasting. Studies show that it's triggered by the metabolic switch that occurs when we deplete our liver glycogen stores and start producing ketones. So in other words, a lot of different things, including diets, can produce ketones, and it's that metabolic switch that's occurring that's really helping with this response. During fasting, we've talked about this in several videos, the liver glycogen is going to get depleted around 10 to 14 hours. And this is going to trigger a series of signaling cascades that then activate the protective genes. Now, those genes are going to help the cells to cope with stress and prevent damage. So bottom line is you have better resilience and you have slowed aging. So when you look at various organisms, yeast to primates, you'll see that from yeast to primates, there is an extension in lifespan from dietary restriction. There's a study that was published in 2022. This is in the Free Radical Biology and Medicine, references below, that talks about these examples on how it works. So bottom line, fasting is really like a fire drill on your cells. Regular practice prepares them to deal with emergencies that occur in life all the time. And in fasting's case, those emergencies are everyday stressors that are making your cells age faster. So if you notice athletes who train at high altitudes, they perform better at sea level. Well, that's the same concept with fasting. By doing fasting, your cells are better equipped to handle day-to-day stress. So mild stress makes us stronger. And fasting creates the kind of beneficial stress that we really want. All right, question for you. How many of you have tried to fast at least 12 hours consistently? And if you have, I'd love to ask you how you felt. How did you deal with the cravings and hunger? And share your experiences below. Mechanism 2, improved mitochondrial function. The second major way fasting slows down aging is by enhancing mitochondrial function. Your mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells. They generate the energy your cells need to function. Now, as we age, the mitochondria, they typically become less efficient and they start to produce more harmful byproducts. This mitochondrial dysfunction is really one of the main hallmarks of aging. And fasting improves on this through several mechanisms. Number one, it increases mitochondrial biogenesis. Fasting activates several key signaling pathways like AMP kinase, PGC1 alpha. And all of these pathways, what they end up doing is helping to create new mitochondria. There's also this concept of mitochondrial fusion that fasting promotes, which is basically allows to take mitochondria and bring them together. And the concept there is you're basically diluting out the damaged components and increasing the healthy mitochondria that can continue to function. There's the reduction of oxidative stress. In other words, fasting increases antioxidant enzymes. It reduces the production of those harmful reactive oxygen species. It protects mitochondria from damage. And then you start to look at mitochondrial dynamics. Fasting helps to maintain a healthy balance between mitochondrial fusion and fission. It helps to remove damaged mitochondria through different processes. And so as we start to look at the overall picture, what we're finding is the impact of fasting on mitochondria is quite powerful. Let's take a look at some of the research. There's a study from 2023 in the British Journal of Nutrition. They showed that intermittent fasting promotes high expression of SIRT3 or SIRT3, and this induces mitochondrial fusion in mice. The researchers found basically that SIRT3-mediated deacetylation of MDH2 played a key role in this process and basically led to improved mitochondrial function. Now, if that sounds like all sorts of science jargon, bottom line is the impact on sirtuins is very powerful in terms of what fasting can do. Another study, this was published in 2022, Free Radical Biology and Medicine, and what they found was fasting improved mitochondrial function in the brain, and this may actually be helpful in regards to age-related neurodegenerative diseases, cognitive function decline, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. So bottom line is you're getting more efficient energy production, you're reducing the oxidative damage to cells, you're improving cell health, and you're slowing the aging process. And this is why when it comes to longevity researchers, many consider the health of mitochondria to be a central target of any anti-aging interventions. And fasting is one of those ways that has been around for so long. It's proven safe. There's many different ways to do it. And it can be part of your daily lifestyle for the rest of your life. And then something that people don't realize, and I'll explain this more in just a few minutes, is these mitochondrial improvements that actually occur with fasting. They may be the most important part for your brain health than just about any other organ. So we'll get to that as we get to mechanism number 4. Mechanism 3, reduction in inflammatory markers. The third way intermittent fasting slows down aging is by reducing chronic inflammation. And so when we start to look at this concept of inflammation, this chronic low grade inflammation that occurs on a day-to-day basis, this is one of the key drivers of aging and age-related diseases. In fact, if you look at heart disease, if you look at kidney disease, diabetes, cancer, neurodegenerative or brain disorders, all of these are tied to inflammatory conditions. And why is fasting great? Because it can reduce several inflammatory markers through all sorts of mechanisms. So when we look at pro-inflammatory cytokines, fasting will downregulate them. So in other words, molecules like interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, TNF alpha, they'll all go out and go down overall. When you look at NLRP3 inflammasome, you'll see that this inflammasome gets inhibited. And as it gets inhibited by fasting, you'll see that there's increased levels of things like arachidonic acid and activation once again of SIRT3 or sirtuins. Sirtuins play such an important role in the body that this whole cascade that fasting is doing is just absolutely fascinating and so simple to do. Even things like CRP, there's lots of data that C-reactive protein or CRP also goes down. And then you start to look at things like your immune system. So there's modulation of monocytes. So what happens is fasting will reduce the number and inflammatory activity of immune cells that are floating all over your body. And this is actually helpful because you don't need an overactive or overly aggressive immune system. Even when you look at breaking down of lipids or fats, fasting can lead to beneficial changes in sphingolipids, ceramides, all of which are associated with inflammation. Now, in terms of research studies, there's lots of studies, but there's a 2016 study. This was published in Mediators of Inflammation, found that 24 hours of fasting reduced basal cytokine expression in white adipose tissue. There's another fasting study. This one is published in Cell Reports just last year, 2024. This discovered that arachidonic acid inhibition of the NLRP3 inflammasome is one of the key mechanisms for explaining the anti-inflammatory benefits of fasting. And then there is a meta-analysis. This was published in Nutrition 2020, and this confirmed that intermittent fasting significantly reduces plasma concentrations of C-reactive protein, both in overweight and obese individuals. So, bottom line here is reducing chronic inflammation. Fasting can address one of the fundamental drivers of aging. The bottom line with that is it can potentially increase both lifespan and health span. So if you're thinking about this and hearing all these complicated science terms, think about it this way. Inflammation is like a slow burning fire inside your body. Now, it may seem unnoticeable day to day, but over years, it weakens every aspect of your body from within. And fasting is like periodically cutting the oxygen supply to that fire. Essentially, it gives your body a chance to repair the damage. So as you're thinking about this, the question that I have for you is, if you've ever tried fasting, how has it worked for you? And once again, what are your challenges with it? And have you measured any of your inflammatory markers like interleukins or CRP? And if so, what change did you see when you fasted? Mechanism 4, promotion of autophagy. So the fourth mechanism through which intermittent fasting slows down aging is by promoting autophagy. Autophagy is a very simple way of saying it's your natural body's process for cleaning out damaged cells, regenerating newer, healthier cells. So the word autophagy, it comes from Greek. It means self-eating. And it's one of the most important cell maintenance mechanisms that we have. So think of it as how your body recycles things. So during autophagy, what happens is the damaged cellular components, they're identified. Then they're enclosed in a membrane, delivered to lysosomes for breakdown, and the resulting building blocks then get recycled for cellular repair, rebuilding other cells, etc. But the problem is, as we age, autophagy naturally declines, and this results in the recycling process starting to slow down, a buildup of trash or cellular damage, and fasting turns out to be one of the simplest and most powerful ways to activate and reactivate autophagy. And this occurs through several key points. One, There's activation of AMP kinase and inhibition of mTOR. We've talked about both of these in detail in several other studies, but fasting activates AMP kinase due to the fact that there's decreased energy, and it inhibits mTOR. Remember, mTOR is building proteins and so forth, both of which, the activation of AMP kinase, the inhibition of mTOR, they both enhance the recycling process or autophagy. There's also upregulation of autophagy-related genes. So what happens is as you fast, the signal tells the body there's mild stress, hormesis, and so you get this expression of genes that are absolutely critical for the autophagy process. Then there's the deacetylation of autophagy proteins. Basically, fasting is going to trigger changes in autophagy proteins and make their activity more powerful. There's also increase in spermidine levels. So spermidine is very essential for autophagy to occur, and you're increasing the levels. You're also reducing inhibitory proteins that may be preventing autophagy from occurring. So what's the data? There's a comprehensive review in Aging Research Reviews from 2018. They analyzed the effects of autophagy, of fasting specifically on autophagy, and they found that yes, there was a significant evidence to support that fasting led to autophagy. There's another study, 2020, from Nature Communications. This demonstrated that fasting induced FGF21 signaling, and that activated hepatic or liver autophagy. It helped in breakdown of lipids, and it did so via a number of mechanisms such as JMJD3 histone demethylase. There's a 2022 study published in Science Advances, and they discovered that deacetylation of ATG4B, it promoted autophagy, once again under starvation conditions. Bottom line, these studies are showing that if you do fasting or the act of restricting calories, it triggers autophagy. And so the bottom line as you think about all of this is, once again, is what you're trying to do is turn on your body's recycling. That's all you're doing. And by promoting this cellular cleanup process, you're going to maintain your cellular function and integrity over time. Now, potentially, this could lead to living longer, but more importantly, it could lead to living healthier. So if you remember, I mentioned there's a brain health connection here. And this is where it really shines. Your brain cells, they can't divide and they can't replace themselves like most other cells. So autophagy is absolutely critical in keeping them healthy throughout your lifetime. The cleanup and recycling process is very important against neurodegenerative conditions. I think it's like the third time I've had to say the word neurodegenerative, and every single time I can't get the word out. So my apologies for that. But remember, the idea is this: preserving your brain function is absolutely critical to your health span and to your lifespan. And that's where autophagy through fasting really shines. Mechanism 5, metabolic switching and ketone production. The fifth and final major pathway that intermittent fasting slows down aging through is metabolic switching and ketone production. So when we eat regularly throughout the day, the body primarily uses glucose or blood sugar for energy, but during fasting, a remarkable metabolic switch occurs. Now remember, you need about 10 to 14 hours of fasting, specifically closer to about 14 hours, where your liver glycogen stores are going to become depleted. And once that happens, your body is going to switch and start to break down fat stores and release those fatty acids. Now, those fatty acids are going to go to the liver. They're going to be converted into ketone bodies. And these ketone bodies, the primary one being beta hydroxybutyrate or beta and acetoacetate, they're going to become the alternative fuel source, both for your body and, more importantly, your brain. So this concept of metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch between different fuel sources, is linked with living longer and reduced markers of aging in a number of studies in animal models. So ketones, what's unique about them, they aren't just an alternative fuel source. Turns out they're also signaling molecules, and those signaling molecules can have many different beneficial effects. So ketones, for example, activate AMP kinase. This will promote autophagy. This will promote mitochondrial biogenesis, or creating more mitochondria. Ketones will inhibit all sorts of inflammatory pathways, so they'll reduce inflammation. They will increase antioxidant enzyme production. They will enhance the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports brain health. So when you start to look at the research, once again, the research is quite fascinating. There's a 2019 study in the New England Journal of Medicine. They highlighted how metabolic switching triggers cellular and molecular adaptations, and this leads to improvements in how different organs function. It also showed how there's increased resistance to both stress and disease. There's a 2024 paper in Trends in Endocrinology and Metabolism. They explored the mechanisms of liver or hepatic fatty acid oxidation and ketogenesis during fasting, and they showed how these processes regulated transcription factors like PPAR alpha that we talked about. Then there's the 2024 study in Liver International, and they revealed that transcriptional cascades that occur during fasting, they amplify gluconeogenesis, they instigate a secondary wave of ketogenic gene transcription. Bottom line with all of these studies is metabolic switching. It enhances flexibility, enhances efficiency. And so this metabolic switching that occurs from fasting, switching from glucose over to ketones, is such a key part of making our bodies more resilient. So another way to think about this concept is most people today, they live their entire lives using one metabolic pathway, which is breakdown of sugar. When you think about the alternative model, it's like having a hybrid car, but most people are only using gasoline and never switching to electric power. Now, fasting is going to activate the hybrid engine. It's going to allow you to tap in that electric power that's stored inside that hybrid car. I don't know if that's a great example, but I was thinking of examples and I thought this made sense, so why not talk about it? All right, let's get to the conclusion of this talk. Now remember, you can go back, listen to any section to learn more about it. All the studies are there for you. We've talked about 5 key mechanisms through which fasting can slow down aging. So once again, the enhanced cellular stress response. Number 2, improved mitochondrial function. Number 3, reduction in inflammatory markers. Number 4, promotion of autophagy. And number 5 was metabolic switching and ketone production. So what makes fasting so remarkable is that all 5 of these mechanisms, they work together synergistically. So it's not like one pathway is effective. It's this comprehensive cellular rejuvenation program that's triggered simply by what you eat, what you don't eat, and when you eat. And this is why I tell people that timing of your meals may matter more so than so many other things that people talk about longevity, like supplements, etc. But timing of your meals actually matters. And it matters not just for lifespan, more importantly, it matters for health span. So not just how long you live, but how well you live. So how can you apply this to your life? Here's some practical takeaways. When you're looking at fasting, especially intermittent fasting, try to think of your eating window as 6 to 10 hours. That means in terms of your fasting period that's happening, it's 14 hours all the way up to 18 hours. And if you're already comfortable with that, you can do other things on top of that. Now, while we're talking about fasting, let's not forget sleep, exercise, social connections, the love part, eating a predominantly whole food diet. All of those things matter, and consistency matters. And if you're going to do this, please start slowly. Talk to your doctor. Don't make significant changes just because you heard somebody talk about it on YouTube, including myself. Fasting isn't appropriate for everyone. People who are pregnant, breastfeeding, eating disorders, type 1 diabetics, and there's a lot of other people in that category that I haven't mentioned that should not do fasting. So let me leave you with this thought. What if the most powerful longevity intervention isn't a pill, isn't an expensive treatment, but simply changing when you eat? Hopefully, the evidence that you heard from me today points to that. As always, if you found this information valuable, please give this video a like. Consider subscribing to the channel as I present to you more evidence-based content on optimizing health span and lifespan through self-longevity method: sleep, exercise, love, and food. Now, This community is built on a simple concept of do good for others, practice kindness, practice gratitude. So if this helps you, share your experience. Put it in the comments below. Have you tried fasting? What's worked for you? What hasn't? What were the dangers? Share it so people can learn from it. And until next time, here's to living longer, living better, and using science as our guide. Thank you, everyone.